Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show, all about movies.
You're listening to the Jan Price Show, and today my guest is award-winning producer-director Lydia Dean Pilcher. Welcome to the show, Lydia.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you here. And we're going to talk about you have many films out, but we're going to specifically concentrate on Radium Girls, which I just loved. And it's got an amazing cast. So starring Joey King and Abby Quinn. And what I'm always interested in is how you got attracted to this project. And also, we want to tell our audience a little bit about what Radium Girls is about. So let's talk about let's first tell the audience what the movie is about, Radium Girls, and how you got attracted to this project.
Okay. I think I can do both in one go. I have a company in New York, Cinemosaic, and I had been looking for a film that we could take on that would deal with the environment, something that I am very passionate about, and I wanted to merge my passion and my storytelling career. And I've been looking far and wide. Trust me, I really was digging deep. And someone told me about this screenplay that was written by Ginny Moeller and Brittany Shaw about the Radium Girls story. And I just got their phone number and said, send it to me right now. I read it like within 24 hours. I read it, couldn't put it down. It's an amazing story that most people haven't heard of, about factory workers. Our story is based on an American radium factory in Orange, New Jersey in the late 1920s, when American Radium and different radium companies, Illinois, Connecticut, had started hiring women to sort of paint these luminous watch dials, glow-in-the-dark watch dials. It was a time when radium was considered to be a miracle elixir. It had just been discovered by Marie Curie, and it was reducing tumors, so it seemed healthful, but at the same time, everybody, and you can imagine entrepreneurs, were just going crazy. Well, you can drink the water, you can put it in your cosmetic and use it to x-ray your foot when you're getting your shoe size measured. And so people were just going full tilt. But these girls in the factories were literally imbibing the radium because they were lip pointing their brushes. The same technique that had been used for China painting for years. And as girls began to fall sick, the corporation brought in a company doctor. They also brought in a research team. They kind of knew what was going on, but they didn't want to slow down the big buck that were rolling in. And so the rest of the story is really about what happens when a few of the girls really uncover what was happening, the real story. Yeah.
And it is so good. I mean, New Jersey's my home state, and this is set in around 1925, which I love anything to do with the 20s. I think I lived in that era in one of my past lives for sure. But I have such an affinity towards it. But what I love these kinds of stories where, and it's a true story. It's based on a true story during that time period, that these young women or anyone who becomes a whistleblower, who fight all the odds. They don't have the money. They're fighting big corporations, and they are not going to take no, and that they continue with the story. But it has a different kind of ending, and I don't want to give that away. But let's talk a little bit about the two girls that are the protagonist in the story, who this is about, and their older sister.
Yeah, I think the thing that I was really compelled by in the story is that these were teenage girls, and they were sisters, and they were different, in the way that so many members of families can be different. One had dreams of going to Hollywood and becoming a big star, and the other one was going to Egypt and doing archaeological digs. And they were both, working in this very small factory in a sort of a small piece of the world, but New York was right across the river. And we were very interested in sort of bringing what the world of the time was that the Radium Girls existed in to bear, because it did unfold that is important in terms of how their story also unfolds. So, so it was an age of innocence for these two girls, mm-hmm. and it was, they were really thinking this was a job, and their dreams lived somewhere way beyond. But when the sickness started to happen, there had been a woman who was working at the New Jersey Consumers League named Catherine Wiley, and she's a very important person to this whole story because there were radium factories in a lot of other cities, but this New Jersey Health Department, a woman had given Catherine Wiley some reports about the workers falling sick, and Catherine Wiley was like, wait a minute, you're saying that, all of these women are falling sick with the same illness, they all work at the same place, and it's not work related? And so she was finding that she was stonewalled everywhere she went. And when the Radium Girls came to visit her, she said, well, have you had any other family members that have worked at the factory? And they said, yes, our older sister died, 2 years ago. They said she had syphilis. And one of the sisters gets very kind of unsettled that the other sister is sort of divulging these very sort of private details, things that women don't want to talk about. Mm-hmm. And Catherine Wiley says, well, we've been looking for a body to exhume because this is the only way we can really evaluate what the cause of death was. And that's just the light bulb moment. They didn't have it right there in the office. One of them just wanted to get up and leave. She was done. The other one was listening very intently. But when they got home, they talked about it. And they decided for their older sister, they had to do it. And when the body was exhumed, it was indeed radium poisoning, and there was no trace of syphilis.
And that's what's also interesting, because they also diagnosed other women with syphilis. And it's kind of like, okay, wait a minute, how can everybody have syphilis?
Yeah.
It's all working in the same place. But
Right.
Again, big corporations, it's not unlike what's going on today. What was also... I'm like you. The environment is incredibly important to me also. And that's why I love what I do, because I can highlight the kinds of movies that I want to highlight that deal with the subject matters that, that I'm interested in and hopefully the audience is interested in too. But today, but even after all of this, and I hope I'm not giving anything away, this company continued to work until the 70s, right?
Well, that factory was shut down at the end of the story, but it had more to do with governmental legislation that was in dire need of, even coming into existence. I would say reform, but it didn't even exist. And that's the part of the story that I think is really also pretty fascinating about the Radium Girls story, which was that they existed in a time when women had just, gotten the right to vote not that long ago. There were a lot of higher level women activists in a lot of different fields. There was, Alice Hamilton, who was a pioneer in chemical toxicology. The woman and her husband who did the study at American Radium were working for the Harvard University Department of Public Health. There was, Jane Hull, there was social justice, the Consumers League, the League of Women Voters, academics. All of these women had been in the suffrage movement. And so when they were very concerned about industrialization, they were concerned that there was no child regulation about, labor. And there was no regulation about chemical safety. And so they really took this on, and once they realized that the girls were going to stand up and were willing to actually sue the corporation and go to court, they really got down and said, here's the media engine, we're going to support you. And they took it to a national level.
Amazing back then. Again, this is the beginning of the suffragette movement and women getting more and more in the workforce and everything. But even given all of that, what transpired? What changed? What do you think changed as a result of them and the media coverage and the lawsuit and everything else? Because I'm not sure what do you think changed?
Well, I think what we know, which the Radium Girls will never know, is that their case had a tremendous impact on all the legislation in the court cases to come. They were one of the first court cases that ever existed in the age of industry about worker safety. And so, even when we finished the movie, the EPA reached out to us, some scientists reached out to us just to say how thrilled they were that we had made the movie, because they still use the Radium Girls case as precedents when they're arguing court cases around toxic chemical regulation today. So I think, I think that they actually had a lot more impact than they could have ever imagined that they would have. So it's an honor to be able to sort of bring their story to light and honor them in that way.
It is. It really is. It's a beautifully done movie. I love the cinematography, the atmosphere, the music. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you decided to film it? I mean, you have a co-director on this. Is right?
Yes, Ginny Moeller, who co-wrote the screenplay with Brittany Shaw. Ginny and I co-directed the film, and it was great to work together. We had, once I had met Ginny and Brittany in New York, we were all in New York, we just started meeting regularly and really developing the screenplay further and doing deeper and deeper research in terms of the world building aspects of the story. And then we, started to make the plan toward, production. So, yeah, we had it's a very female-driven crew, and all of the department heads. Lily, Rebecca McDonough is the composer, and she had come out of a screen scoring program at NYU and just really just knocked us out. She just has such a versatile style, really is attracted to sound design in her music, but also has a real ear for a classicism as well, that it really made for a very interesting, I think, sort of emotional score. And our cinematographer, Matthew Plainfossé, was a French cinematographer who had come to New York because he wanted to shoot independent films. And we met him, and he just had this amazing reaction to the script and loved it. It felt very, very passionate about it. And so we teamed up with Matthew, and we felt really lucky to get him. And that was also a very strong collaboration for us.
Yeah, it's, as I said, it's beautifully shot, and the way you've done it really does bring you back to the feel of what that era felt like, the atmosphere of that era, and that's what I love. But today, the one of the things is that we think as Americans that our government is protecting us, and lo and behold, it's not. So with this current administration that we have, a lot of things have changed. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? About some of the, our consumer safety regulations and that have been, and our environmental protection rules and things that have been repealed?
Yes, I think, I think there's a power balance that's always at play between, commerce and just kind of a general, communal well-being. And it's a conversation that I think is what this election is all about, that we're heading into. But it is interesting when you actually look at the details of the Radium Girls story and what's happening now, because, there's a scene with when the girls had finally hired a lawyer. It took them a very long time because nobody really wanted to nobody wanted to represent a bunch of girls against a big corporation that was the power base of the economy in their town. Finally, somebody took the case, and they're having their first meeting, and it kind of starts to dribble out that actually there had been this research study done that they couldn't actually use because American Radium had commissioned a study, and therefore they owned it. And there's a character, Doris, who says, owning research, that's like owning gravity. But it kind of rings out in terms of I think the frustration that many of us feel about the debates and the dialogues going on around science and research and who controls it and the money that's involved and how high the stakes are in terms of the money, and whether the government is trusting, the research centers that we've relied on for all of our lifetimes. It creates a real maelstrom of uncertainty. So that's an interesting parallel, and I think it does, that sort of centrifugal force of the parallel really is, mirrored in all of these other ways in terms of, economies collapsing, workers. Is it safe to go back to work? What do we know about COVID? What did they know about radium? It's really, it's quite striking.
It is. It is. That's why this movie is just so pertinent today. A lot of people will go, "Oh, this took place back in the 1920s. Why would I even be that interested in it?" And the parallels of what's going on in our world today. I mean, it just shows you nothing's really changed in all of these years, many years that we've gone through, and they had changed, and now they're getting changed back again. It's all about money, isn't it? It's always about big money. It's follow the money.
Yeah.
Who is funding these various things that are going on in our world right now. You've got a great cast, as I mentioned earlier, with Joey King, who's just such, she's appearing in a lot of things and developing quite the reputation as a really good young actress. And then Abby Quinn also, both of them. And they were really wonderful in this film. How did you attract both of them to this film?
Well, Abby, I had worked with on another movie. She had taken a small film in The Sisterhood of Night, and the casting director on that film had come to me and said, there's this great actress in Boston. She's in high school, and her mom's not going to let her, leave school to do this. But you should just put her in a part, like have her come in on the weekend, do something. I said, really? She's from Boston. We have to bring somebody in. She goes, this girl's going to be a star, and you should just put her in the movie. So I was like, yes, ma'am. So we cast Abby in a very small part, and sure enough, you're sitting in the editing room and you're like, this girl has incredible presence. She has an incredible internal quality that I call the X factor. Mm-hmm. When somebody has something and you really see it on the screen. And so I was thrilled that we could offer Abby to play Josephine, the one who aspires to be an archaeologist in the film. And she's just tremendous, I think. Mm-hmm. And she has great chemistry with Joey King. And Joey was really, is really modeled after one of the Radium Girls whose diaries were very much drawn from in the screenplay. Her name was Catherine Shaw. And her diaries really told us a lot about her personality. It was she was very bubbly and dynamic and had a vivid imagination. She was a dreamer. And you could tell all of that. And the idea of, casting somebody that could have that kind of sort of breathless, reckless, joie de vivre, Joey just seemed like she was it. And so we were thrilled when she expressed interest in the project and we offered her the part. And then together, the two, just had such chemistry and they really loved each other on screen and off screen. And I think you really feel that in the movie. You feel that connection.
Yeah, you really do. Yeah, there's great chemistry, of the two characters there, in the film. So it's great casting. And, you're not always sure you're going to get that, obviously, when you're casting a movie, but they play off of each other really well on this. Where can people see Radium Girls?
Well, we are playing across the country in about 30 different theaters, in places where theaters are able to open with social distancing. And in cities where they're not able to open, sometimes we're partnering with cinemas on a virtual partnership. Mm-hmm. But if everybody goes to radiumgirlsmovie.com and looks under play dates, you can see them. You can find out where to see the movie. You can either see it in a theater near you, or you can buy a digital ticket online on the platform that we have and make your own popcorn and watch it at home.
Mm-hmm. many of us are doing nowadays. The theaters where I live are not open, much to my chagrin, because I always feel movies should be seen in the movie theater. I say that all the time here. But, who knows what's going to happen with our movie theaters as we move forward. Is it going to, do you know at this stage whether it will be eventually on video on demand and digital?
Yes, it will be. We're going to run, it is available digitally now because you can go to radiumgirlsmovie.com and it will let you buy. As of tomorrow at 12 o'clock, you can buy a ticket right then and there.
Okay, great.
So, and we'll be released in this way until mid-January, and then we will go on to the more traditional platforms at that point.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, everybody should seek out Radium Girls because it is just it's a wonderful movie. It's beautifully done, and well acted and directed, and the music, everything is just wonderful about it. I want to talk a little bit about a movie I have not seen. I did attempt to go see it at the Santa Barbara Film Festival. It was the hit of the Santa Barbara Film Festival because all of the screenings, and they even added extra screenings during the festival, were sold out. I mean, you just couldn't get in. And that is Liberte, A Call to Spy. And there's a lot of buzz about this movie right now. Can we talk? And although I haven't seen it, can you tell us a little bit about it? And I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yes, it's a movie that the writer and producer Sarah Megan Thomas had come to my office and she asked to see Radium Girls. We showed her the movie, and it was really off of that experience that she said, "Would you like to direct this movie about 3 female spies who were hired by Churchill during World War II as the first civilian spies as women to go into occupied France and work under the Ministry of Economic Warfare. It was to conduct sabotage and subversion to slow down the Nazi invasion." So I was, it was a story that just, was unbelievable. There was the 3 spies. One was a Romanian Jew working in London, Vera Ack. One was an Indian woman who had grown up in France and lived in London, Noor Inayat Khan, Muslim. And then there was an American, Virginia Hall, who had lost a leg in a hunting accident, and the Americans would not hire her to be in the Foreign Service. So she went to Europe, and she was hired out of the London office to go to France. So the story is it's a story about these 3 women in this particular part of the war before the Americans came in, and then after the Americans came in, but before D-Day. And it was an amazing experience to direct that movie because, again, these were women who were really taking on something much bigger than themselves, different from the Radium Girl, but going out into Nazi-occupied France where there was really not a high percentage of a chance that you would come back, was pretty intense. Pretty dangerous. Very
dangerous, and nobody really knew about them, obviously. So how did this story get unearthed?
Well, Sarah really found the story, and there were 39 female SOE agents hired out of Churchill's war room, and there were many other men SOE agents. They were all part of a French resistance that was a internationally driven sort of phenomena of people coming from different countries, really to try to defeat Hitler before he completely took over France. And I had done a lot of research in the Imperial War Museum archives in London, and I also went to Lyon, and there's an amazing resistance museum there that was actually Klaus Barbie's headquarters when he came in as the head of the Gestapo.
I hate to interrupt you, but our time has run out.
Okay.
Where can people find A Call to Spy, Liberte, A Call to Spy?
A Call to Spy is being distributed by IFC Films, and you can go to acalltospyfilms.com and find all the play dates, but it's also on Amazon and all the other major platforms.
Wonderful.
A Call to Spy.
A Call to Spy. I do recommend it because everybody raving about it during the Santa Barbara Film Festival. Thank you so much, Lydia. It was a pleasure having you on the show, and I wish you much success with both of these movies.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
You're welcome. Yeah. You can listen to The Jan Price Show whenever and wherever at thejanpriceshow.com, where all my shows are archived, or you can listen on the iHeart Podcast Network, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Thank you for listening.
Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show, all about movies.